Banks have come under heavy fire from the public recently for fees and charges, and especially in light of one bank increasing their fees just recently. And now it seems as if the politicians have jumped on the bandwagon, with opposition senator in particular, Wade Mark, highlighting the bank fees and linking it to saying, the banks were telling the opposition what to do with the FATCA bill, but they can't tell you all what to do with the bank fees. How do the banks feel about all of this scrutiny with regards to your fees right now?
I suppose it is probably welcome, so that we can actually have a chance to show that there's a lot of misinformation out there about bank fees and bank charges, and so the scrutiny is what will enable us to display the real information.
How do you tell your customers who are going through a really tough economic time, who some of them barely have enough to get through every month, how do you justify your fees and justify increasing fees?
Well, I think the fees, we need to understand what the fees represent. The fees represent a portion of the cost of providing the products and services that the banks provide to our clients. Okay, so from a justification point of view, I don't think that there will ever be a justification that anyone can give anyone for a fee that they have to pay. That the banks have in fact provided options which enable the clients to self-select and to manage the fees that they actually pay. So you will find that if you do any analysis of the fees and charges, that banks actually have structured, differentiated charges depending on the products and services that clients use. And so clients actually have the option of reducing the cost of banking services that they receive by choosing actually the more electronic options.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest amount, how would you rate the efficiency level at banks in this country?
I would think the efficiency level of the banks probably between a 6 and a 7.
Some might say that the fees are slapped on there to make up for the lack of efficiency in some cases.
I don't think so, because as I said, the fees actually only recover a part of the cost of providing the service. So, if you do an analysis of any bank's income statement, I could speak for a public bank. If you do an analysis of our income statement, you'll see that our fees actually represent maybe about 40% of the cost of all the various products and services that we provide. That's considerably low, and our efficiency is considerably higher than that.
Right. So if we were to take a look at Republic Bank's, the group's 2016 financial results.
So be careful with the group versus the bank, okay? Because this would include all subsidiaries in Ghana and Suriname, etc. So hopefully you're able to do a comparison.
Yeah, so this is the group. It does not just include Trinidad and Tobago. It includes all the entire Republic.
More challenging.
All the banks under the Republic Bank. Under fees and commission income, it was to $827 million that the bank got in 2015. That went up by 22% in 2016 to just over $1 billion. Now, in your statement, you're saying that other income, when you look at the total other income increased by $75 million, which is roughly 5% more compared to 2015. But it says, excluding Ghana and Suriname, this area actually declined by $36 million. And you broke it down to Trinidad and Tobago. It said that fees and commission increased by $44 million, of which commissions from credit card services increased by $35 million. It also went on to say that there was a $7 million decline in fees from customer account services. To break that down, do you get clearly it indicates that you get a lot of fees from credit card services.
Okay, but you understand how the fees from credit card services are derived. The fees from credit card services really are derived on the transactions. Okay, and the fees are actually not paid by the client. The fees are paid by the merchants.
There was a $7 million decline in fees from customer account services.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that?
Well, hopefully, and I think maybe it was, that clients are in fact shifting the channels that they are using. Because what Republic Bank did between 2015 and 2016 is that we restructured our fees. So you find that the more electronic channels that are used by clients, no fees are paid.
The more money you collect from fees and commission, it helps your bottom line at the end of the financial year, doesn't it?
But you see, you're only looking at the income side, you're not looking at the expense side. So like, for example, as I said, if the fees and commissions represent about 40% of the expenses, then to the extent that I could redirect the business. I'll actually save more on the expense side.
Just an article that the former central bank governor Jawala Rambaran wrote on fees, bank fees, and I just want to quote, and I just want your response on it. He said, "Today, very low interest rates and weak loan demand have put significant pressure on interest income, while leaving banks with still high operating costs to meet the demands, the needs and convenience of their customers." He goes on to say, "In these circumstances, banks have turned to income from non-interest sources, especially fee income and foreign exchange trading, to support their operations and profits."
Well, there's a lot of, I don't like to say misinformation inside of it, but there's maybe a little bit of misinformation inside of there. Because from your very own example of Republic Bank, you will see that actually our fees and commissions in Trinidad declined, setting aside the credit card. In the case of, let's say, interest income or net interest income is supposed to reflect the risk associated with doing transactions.
Another comment he made is that he's saying there are suspicions about potential for collusion in some parts of the personal banking market. Now, this is a person who has clearly who was in charge of regulating banks in Trinidad and Tobago, and now this former central bank governor, he's making these comments. How do the banks feel about this?
Well, I think we categorically deny, right, any comment or any suggestion that there's any collusion. From where I sit, Judy, I believe that the banking system in Trinidad and Tobago is the most competitive of all the sectors. You might want to suggest that interest rates tend to be similar, but I'm sure if you recall, Republic Bank interest rates on loans was higher than the other banks' interest rates. We all have different cost structures, so it is impossible for us to try and align, right, our pricing structure.
Bank customers would argue that it's not even so easy to switch from one bank to the next. So if you're not happy with the rates charged by one bank and you want to jump ship to another bank, it's not so easy because there's this lengthy process of documents demanded by the banks. And
well, let me correct you. The documents are not demanded by the banks. The documents are required by the financial system. Okay, and while it might be a lengthy process, okay, if I'm to look forward to the future and I'm to say, okay, I am doing an investment now in my future, I mean, taking 2 weeks or 3 weeks, in order to put together the required information is a very short period of time.
Why is it that Trinidad and Tobago thinks that banks are not competitive then?
Well, is it that Trinidad and Tobago thinks so? I mean, I have not seen the empirical evidence to suggest that.
It seems as if the outrage against banks and its fees and charges is simply growing. It's growing and it's getting worse and worse. How are the banks going to deal with this? Obviously, you cannot just sit back and allow this to get out of hand. You have to come out and tell customers something. You have to justify it. And while you might try to justify it, in the customer's eyes, they are not buying your story. Then what do you do? Is it that banks are going to ease up on fees and charges, or
okay, so first of all, I would say this, right? I mean, justify is a strong word. I think what we are going to try to do really is to explain. But if we are going to get engaged in any kind of debate, we need to put facts on the table. Not because I want to convince someone that my position is correct or that their position is wrong, but I'm going to put the facts on the table. We're going to explain where the fees and charges come from.
Given the economic downturn right now and more people are losing their jobs, it's clearly that some people might not be able to repay their loans, their mortgages. And you're already seeing in some banks in their financial statements that their loan loss provisions are increasing significantly. If you have to set aside that large amount, if there's that loss with regards to that area, where are the banks going to make up that shortfall? Some might question whether it's going to come from fees and commission.
Well, let's see what happens, right? Because at least from a Republic Bank perspective, what we are trying to do is to see how we can become more and more efficient in our products and services.
Imagine losing your job and a year later you're still at home, unable to secure work. When we come back, a former energy worker tells his story.